All right. We, okay, it's telling me to wait. Hey, okay, I am 7, 8, 9, 10 seconds in. We had a little bit of a glitch, and that's why you guys are just seeing me. But guess what? We're here. Good morning, everyone. Thank you, my real ones, my real ones, my real ones. I am Real Dence Nay, and I want to thank you for viewing this very important, very informational, very, if you love technology, this is where you need to be. If you love me, this is where you need to be. And guess what else, you guys? Please make sure you subscribe to this channel if you already have not. And if you are subscribed, hey, thank you, thank you, thank you. Please like this video. Please share this video. And even after this live, please look at the description box. There is some important information in the description box. And honey, since we are here for this serious, great interview, I would love for you to introduce yourself.
Great. Thank you. Thank you for having me on the show, and it's a unique experience for me to be on a live show, so I appreciate the opportunity. My name's Greg Morris. I'm the CEO of IceTech Technologies. We're a technology company based in Africa, and we service governments, but more importantly, we service the citizens that are the customers of governments. Our entire objective as a business is to improve the experience citizens have engaging with their governments. And I really look forward to sharing some details with you.
All right, all right. So yes, I do. I need as many details as you can allow to be. So let me start off asking you, what does the ICE tech? Is there something that in the meaning of the ICE, those three letters?
Sure. So, our business started sort of 10 years ago, and initially at the time we had a different name, but through the process of our development, we built a software technology platform which we called ICE Engine. And what the ICE part stands for is Integrated Country Engine. The theory behind the solution is that we wanted to build a single platform that you could run an entire country on, where there's a single source of truth for data as it relates to all entities within a country. So in most countries, and I presume in the US there's some similarity, a person has multiple identities within their government. They have their identity with their central, in our countries we call it Home Affairs. I suppose it's where where your ID is stored. Someone may have an identity within a police department, hopefully not. And across states, there are different identities or versions of your identity. So if you have a single source of truth, it should simplify the way you engage with your government. And our platform is built with that premise in mind. And so we renamed the business a few years ago to IceTech, because it's all about integration. It's all about providing a single layer of technology to manage a government. But it's not just about technology. I think the important thing to mention, and this is critical, is that technology is just an enabler. Ultimately, it comes down to people and change. Changing philosophies, changing business processes, to improve the overall experience, the services that one should expect from a government. I think very often governments forget that they are there to serve the citizen, not the other way around. And many governments become self-serving, and we try to turn this on its head. And interestingly, if I was running a country, I would want to offer great service to my citizens, because that's what would keep me in power. The better job I do, the more they'd want to vote me into power. That's the logical conclusion, but very often that sort of logic doesn't quite exist. There's often a shorter term mentality that exists in government, and that's something we try to facilitate change, transformation. I think that's probably the best way to put it.
Wow, transformation. And that sounds like a very difficult task, especially, like you said, with the government. Yeah. And I'm a voter at that and taxpayer. Yeah, like, hello, earth to government, earth to government.
Yeah. So, yeah, you're right.
I'm so glad you stated that.
Yeah, it seems logical to assume that government officials will see it that way, and I understand their jobs are difficult because there are always competing interests from different groups, and satisfying everybody is challenging. So I'm not under illusions about the fact that we can make an utopia, but it's about changing small things. There's an interesting story, about a city in Albania called Triana, which many years ago was a crime-ridden, very corrupt place, and a new mayor came to power. And what he did to transform the city is he started painting it in bright colors. So he took these drab buildings, which were, I guess, quite depressing, and set the tone for an image that wasn't inviting. And by painting the buildings bright colors, and I know it sounds like a really simple solution, the net effect is it started to change the mindset of people, and they became proud of their city, and it changed the dynamic over time. So one small change had a massive effect. So from our perspective, we often look at it like that. If you can make one small change, eat the elephant one bite at a time, eventually you get to eat the whole elephant. Excuse the analogy, I'm from Africa, so we don't have them walking down the street like some people may think, but it's I think an appropriate analogy.
Yes, oh, definitely. And of course, we have a visitor here, and he is a fan of the channel. And he's saying hello. And I want to say hello back to you, Sinister Tar Heel. Thank you. Shout out, shout out. And so, Greg, I can call you Greg, or do you prefer Mr. Morris, Mr. CEO?
I'm casual. I'm dressed casual. I am casual. And for me, I hate titles. Ultimately, titles don't demand respect. Respect is something you earn through your engagement with people. So for me, it's Greg. With everyone that works for me, it's the same sort of attitude. There's, for us, our values in our organization are really important, and the key part of it is there's no egos. Yes, I'm the CEO, which means I'm responsible for everybody, but ultimately we're a team, and we work as a team, and our people make our business happen, not me. So just Greg.
So how long have you been the CEO of IceTech?
Since 2014. So the business is 10 years old this year. I joined it a couple of years after it started. I joined my partners, and at that stage, we only had a couple of projects, and I joined with a view to expanding into multiple markets, redefining our strategy, and growing the business to where we are today. It's something I've done in multiple industries previously. I'm an entrepreneur in spirit, and have been since my early 20s. I'm now approaching 50, which is a bit daunting to think, but but it's so since 2014, and it's been an interesting journey. We went from one country, we're in 9 countries now, and looking to keep expanding beyond Africa. I mean, for now, Africa is our playground, but we see similar challenges in many other countries, and it's about solving problems and improving things for people, and making money at the same time, and having fun. If you can do all 3 of those things, you're in a great space.
Yes.
So interestingly, in your part of the world, or sort of the Americas, we see very similar challenges in places like Mexico, South America, Middle America, to Africa. And we've engaged with potential partners in Latin America, and certainly it's on our radar to look at doing similar things to what we're doing in Africa. Improving things. We have to learn some Spanish. That's a requirement. But Africa, interestingly enough, the vastness of diversity is something that most people don't necessarily appreciate. I think at last count, and I could have my stats slightly wrong, but there's about 5,000 different languages in Africa. So, while the predominant languages that business is done in is either English, French, or Portuguese, one doesn't realize that the borders that make up most of the African countries were an artificial creation of colonialism, and but house many different cultures. And if you take a place like the Congo, there are 2,500 languages in the Congo alone, and it's extremely, obviously they're dominant languages. Many are similar, but there are many cultures that make up what the world calls Congolese people, and that applies to many countries. In South Africa, where I live, there are 11 official languages. English is the main language that business is done in, but officially there are 11 languages. So government documents that are put out are published in all 11 languages.
Wow.
Interesting. Yeah.
Yes, it is. We only get English or Spanish most of the time. Yeah.
Yeah.
The other languages is
Sure.
really like specifically, you have to specifically ask for. So, wow.
Exactly.
So,
well, the US is a melting pot of cultures. I mean, ultimately also, but
yeah. Yeah. So, would you consider IceTech to be pioneers So, and
Yeah.
if so, in what way?
So I think the biggest differentiator that we sort of put forward, and why I would call ourselves pioneers, is that, we don't just sell a piece of software or offer a consulting service. We look at the entire value chain and all the counterparties in that value chain to effect change. And we feel that is pretty much a pioneering approach. We see a lot of typical software vendors selling solutions into Africa, and invariably they don't work because either they're designed for a first world market, or there's a lack of understanding of a local dynamic that needs to be factored into the entire approach. And there are many, many projects that fail as a consequence of this lack of understanding. So we go to great lengths to try and appreciate all these elements before we take on a project. And because we have failed at projects, that's you learn from failure. And most of that failure,
Yes.
if I think about it, is because we didn't understand, we didn't know what we didn't know. And not to say you can always know everything going into it, but I think the biggest lesson we learned is really try and understand all the role players in a process, and what you can do to influence the majority of those elements so that a project is successful. And if you can't do it, rather say no. Warren Buffett is one of his principles he lives by is that you say no to more things than you say yes to, and that's something that we have to be very careful of when we consider projects. Is it's easy to take projects on because you see the dollar signs, but you need to think about whether you really can make it work or not. And if you can't, it's better to say no. So we definitely say no to more than we say yes to be pioneering.
I get it. I get it. I understand it. And I thank you for that. And far as you being a provider to wide range of industries, are you able to shed some light on those wide range of industries that you provide services to?
Sure. So for the most part, it is government. We're pretty focused. We do have some corporate customers in the insurance and banking space domains, but I think early on in the business, we thought a lot about diversification into other industries and realized we understand government. It's what we're good at. It's a difficult space, but when you focus in business, that's when you succeed. And I think from that perspective, while we don't specifically target corporate opportunities, we'll consider them if they fit within the overall theme of what we do, which is transformation. But for now, it's pretty much government. So what government agencies do we typically target? Well, I think what's important to understand, certainly in emerging markets and Africa in particular, is that you need to focus on where the money is. And why I say that is that governments in general, that they want to improve service levels, they need to collect revenue to do it. And the sectors of government services that are where most of the money sits is where they need most of the help, because either that money is stolen through corruption, or which is obviously is a massive issue in government, and it needs systems to control that. or
Yeah.
it's just not collected. So, vehicles is a big focus of ours. Because typically speaking, if someone owns a vehicle, they're generally of a higher economic standing than someone that doesn't. I think one of the project
Right.
types we stay away from is where there's an attempt to tax the poor, which is a common requirement asked of us. If you look at the African continent, unemployment, formal employment rather, is very low. So unemployment levels are extremely high. I mean, South Africa is over 40% unemployment. So typically people survive by sustaining themselves because they trade, they trade anything from fruit and vegetables to whatever they can. There's no formal employment. So governments see this mass of people who are trading, and they want to tax them. And the truth is, you're trying to tax the poorest of the poor because there's a mass of them, and it's never effective. So in most countries, when we arrive and we engage with government, they say, look, I have 5 million street vendors. If I collect $1 a day from each street vendor, our economic problems are solved. And I say to them, but those street vendors barely earn $1 a day, and you want to take that dollar from them.
Wow.
And it's going to cost you $2 a day to collect the $1. So it'll never work. So leave them alone. Let them carry on doing what they're doing to survive, and focus on people that have money. Focus on people that have vehicles because they're using the road. Tax them so that you can improve quality of roads. Tax businesses that are importing goods, offering services because they can afford it, and they are the users of government services more so than the poorest of the poor. So in that context, I'll tell you a little story, if you don't mind. So we were in Benin, which is just to the west of Nigeria, which is where we met flying into. And I had a meeting with the mayor of the port of Cotonou, the capital city. And the first thing he asked me, he said, they want to implement a system to collect taxes from street vendors. And of course, I said to him, it's never going to work. I said, why tax them when they can't afford it, and you're not offering them any sort of service? He said, well, they're using our streets to sell goods and services. I said, but you're not providing a service for that. So I said, let's do the following. Let's go talk to them. Let's ask them the question, what services they would want in order to pay this tax. If you're going to be paying something, you should get something in return. And this mayor was quite shocked. Why would we talk to the public? I said, because they're your customer. That's who you're there to serve. So let's ask the question, because maybe they'll tell us something we don't know. In any business, the best thing you can do is ask your customers what they want. And if you can provide that service, then provide it. So he reluctantly agreed to this crazy idea of actually talking to the people that are your constituents. And but of course he didn't come. He sent me with some emissary to this to speak to these people. And just from a structural perspective, the street vendors were organized in groups in sort of informal markets, and they're run by women, like committees of women. And so we had a translator there because most of them didn't speak English. And we asked them the question, what would you want in return for paying fees to vend your wares? And they said to us, and we actually got the same answer from many groups we spoke to, which is interesting. Said all they'd want is shower facilities, and toilets. If they could get access to basic amenities like that, they would pay for it. So, and it seems like a simple requirement, but when you visit these places, there's no running water, there's no facilities, so if you think you're selling something on the side of the road, where do you go to the bathroom, in the bush?
Yeah.
So we went back to the mayor and we said to him, look, if we put up mobile toilet and shower facilities with turnstiles, and you issue these street vendors an access card, and if they pay their fees, they can access these facilities. If they don't pay the fees, they won't be able to do it. And we did the math, and the economics of that equation would work. You could collect the fees and pay for the service. I mean, you couldn't introduce running water. You'd have to deliver water using water trucks, and you have chemical toilets, but you could still make the entire thing work. And the government could collect its fees. We could use technology to manage it, and you would be offering a service to these women that they wanted, because they said, we work in these filthy, dirty environments, and at the end of the day, we just want to go home to our families clean. And that's like a basic thing they want.
Mm-hmm.
And it was very sad to hear this, that's all they wanted was just the basics. And unfortunately, the mayor didn't buy this. He thought it was a crazy idea, and it never went ahead. But it just shows you that sometimes there are simple solutions to problems that actually could benefit all the parties in the chain if there's the will to move forward. So often, we can propose solutions, but if there isn't the political will to do it, it doesn't happen. So sorry for the long story, but I thought it was an interesting one to share, because it's sort of
it's very interesting.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. So, in that sense, then would that make it, I guess, eco-friendly? Is
Sure.
that part of your?
Well,
yeah.
I mean, I think the concept of eco-friendliness in our context, obviously software is an intellectual process, and invariably most of the solutions we install where there's a requirement for electricity, we'll put in solar systems to power it, because electricity in Africa is generally pretty unreliable. So, if you need something that's up and running 24/7, you can't rely on government supplied power. It's just, your systems will be down. So we do things like toll gates.
Wow.
All run on solar and battery backups, which I would say, I guess, is eco-friendly, because you're using. I mean, one thing that's generally in abundance in Africa is the sun. There's no shortage of it, so you may as well use it. So that we do.
Yeah.
In fact, I mean, where I live in South Africa, power has become a problem here. We have very inconsistent power supply. So I mean, my home is all run off the sun. Which has become a necessity. And for all of my staff, we've moved to an exclusively remote work process as a result of COVID, and we realize actually it works well for us. People work from home, and we've given all of our staff battery backup systems, so they can carry on working in the event that there's no power. So it's a necessity, unfortunately, on the continent. You can run generators, but they're obviously dirty and expensive to run. You've got to get diesel to top them up. So we steer away from that where possible. You can't always do that necessarily, but we certainly try.
Wow. So here is a golden question. How much would you Yeah, because some people get a little nervous when you start speaking in these terms, especially with the how much is your company worth?
That's a difficult question to answer. We're a private company, so a private company is only really worth as much as someone's prepared to pay for it. And at this stage, it's privately held between myself and my partners. So for us, it's worth what we can do with it in the future. The impact that we can make. So for us, it's priceless. If that answers your question.
That's right. That's the best answer I could have expected. That's better than a number. I tell you that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
with you guys being private, are you on a stock market any type of way?
No. So I mean, it's in our long-term plans to either bring on board investors or possibly list on a stock exchange. But at the moment, our focus is growing the business. Very often, and I've been involved in listed companies. I've sat on the boards of listed companies, and the process of being listed, the regulatory constraints, very often defocus the management team from what they need to do day to day. So for us, our priority is growing the business, and but those are future plans potentially only if it helps us with our cause. So obviously, if we had more funding, we could grow more aggressively. But for now, it's all been sort of self-funded. We funded out of profit and shareholder funding, but it's certainly something to consider.
Oh, okay. So if I had $5, can I do that? Would I be considered an
No,
investor with $5?
so unfortunately, we would have to list ourselves on a stock exchange in order for that to be practical. I think we are talking to some larger investors that could help fund some of our projects. But with investors on board, it increases the level of responsibility you have. I mean, at the moment, obviously, our responsibility is to our team members that work for us. We're responsible for them and their families. But now when you widen the net to investors, you become responsible to a much bigger group of people. So, you have to be, I believe, at a certain level of, scale for it to make sense. I mean, we're currently about 300 people in the business. I mean, we're quite small. I don't know, by US standards, I guess we're pretty small. But that's a number that's going to grow over time, and there's a point where we will ideally need investors, and then we'll take your $5 and hopefully turn it into $500.
That's right.
Or
That's right. That's
$5,000.
right. Oh, that'd be way better. But I can start with the 500. Hey, it's much more than what I started with. Correct. That works for me.
Sure.
So with your corporate office, that's interesting. What I found out. So I believe you're a little bit more capable of explaining where your corporate office is located, and I thought that was just completely interesting by itself. So, can you let us know about where your corporate office is located and why?
Sure. So just off the eastern coast of Africa, there's a little island called Mauritius, which probably most of your listeners have never heard of. You can look it up on Google Maps. You'll probably have to zoom in really far to find it. But it is a common location for African businesses to have their corporate headquarters, because Mauritius has gone to great lengths to make it easy to do business globally. So the World Bank has an index they call the Ease of Doing Business Index, and Mauritius, I think, is number one on that, maybe one or two on that Ease of Doing Business Index. So it's got quite a sophisticated banking environment. It subscribes to quite stringent international corporate governance and regulatory frameworks. So it's well considered on a sort of international stage as a good place to house your corporate office. So all our intellectual property as IceTech sits in Mauritius. So all the software is owned out of Mauritius. And the entities that market our products and services around, well, the globe, let's just say, but for the moment, Africa, are marketed out of Mauritius. Our software development team, most of the development team sits in South Africa, but we have developers in other parts of the world. Sadly, we have 2 Ukrainian developers. Fortunately, they've managed to get out of Ukraine and they're in Poland, safe. But it's obviously a very difficult time for people in the Ukraine, and you know, certainly our thoughts are with them and their families. If you go to my LinkedIn page, you know, I've posted a call for donations, sort of for you know, humanitarian aid. It's links that one of our team members put up there. Because interestingly, Ukraine was anyway before this a market with great software development talent, and we were recruiting developers there. You know, there's a general shortage of software developers in Africa and South Africa. Interestingly, what has precipitated the increase in demand for developers and technology professionals in general in South Africa is that Amazon is currently building a huge African presence in South Africa, and they're hiring people like crazy and offering really big salaries to poach people. So we're competing against Amazon for people, which is challenging. But the difference, the one thing we can offer that's really different to Amazon is that we have a corporate culture that's very inclusive. People love working for us. Amazon is known to be quite a mercenary place to work for. You know, they're a great company that have done amazing things, but you know, that culture isn't for everybody. So we make a great effort to be an employer of choice. But it's not so easy to compete when it's against a large organization that has a slightly bigger budget than we do, just slightly.
You would think, right?
So, yeah, exactly. I think they're hiring 15,000 people in South Africa, something crazy like that.
Wow. Well, I guess that would definitely help the economy.
Sure.
You know, that would help. But
that's a good thing.
I guess they'll call you. They'll call you for the cleanup. Like, but can you bring us some eco-friendly stuff over here?
Yeah, I'm not sure eco-friendly is on the top of their priority list, but anyway, I think it's selling products. I guess being competitive. I mean, look, the positive is they're creating jobs. So, you know, one thing we need in this country is job creation, and if they create jobs, then I'm all for it. So I think that's a positive.
Okay. Well, yeah, I think that's awesome because you guys are more in tune as to what is actually going on with the people, and to be
Mm,
able to actually make it transition to and actually assist in the transition, because you work alongside the government to help them see, hey, this will help the people, and in turn it will help the government. And
sure.
I think that makes you stand out, and the reason why you have been mentioned so many times in the news. So, and obviously you're doing something right, because you have been mentioned in some news articles that I was like, wow, IceTech is doing wonders. You're always, and was it not one article was negative? All the articles
That's
were
good to hear.
positive.
That's great to hear.
Yes, and that's of course, a lot of times you see anyone's business in the news, a lot of times you cringe like, oh God. But it was positive. And Z
That's great
News
to hear.
Africa, they called you guys trending. Z News Africa called you trending. And I was like, oh, that is cool. And Electric, I hope I'm stating that correctly. Eclectic Northeast,
Eclectic.
that's another news report. Yes, yes, thank you.
I haven't heard of it, so
Yes, they
you're
mentioned you.
educating me.
Yes, yes. Oh, I did my research. I was not going to come up here, and I knew you were technology and the CEO. I'm like, hold on, let me do my research so that I can be a little bit in the boardroom right with you. So
Well, yeah, you're in my virtual
yeah,
boardroom behind me.
there you go. That's right. So see how I tried to blend in? I tried to blend
Yeah,
in and make it
exactly.
look like I'm in one of those cuticles.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah, gosh, you guys even were mentioned in ethos, corporate ethos.
Wow.
Yes,
Wow. Okay.
Taiwan,
Wow.
Taiwan News, Al
Wow.
Jazeera, and this one, okay, Genovage, Genovage. I hope I didn't slaughter that,
I've
but
never heard of that. So,
Geno. Yes, and more. So those are just a
wow.
few that I had jotted down that you guys, that Ice Tech has been mentioned in the
Wow.
news, and they were all positive that they were working with you guys to help fix the problems that they were having, with their citizens. And as I was just glancing over those articles, that's how I got a
Mm,
little bit better insight as to the uniqueness what
mm.
you do. It isn't
Well, I
just
think
technology, it's like
it's change management.
relations.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think I've sent you those two videos. I don't know if you're able to put them up, but it probably tells the story best of what we do. And so there's a project that we went live with in October 2021, which was for the modernization of the Beitbridge border post, which which is the busiest border post on the African continent. It's the border between South Africa and Zimbabwe. And why it's the busiest border post, if you look at the geography, most of the trade, or most imports and product comes into South Africa. And the trucking routes or routes, as you put it, as you say, go, across Beitbridge, which is actually a bridge. It's a bridge that crosses a river called the Limpopo River, and it's been a notorious nightmare to cross that border. There's, I would say, a couple of weeks before we went live, and there's a before video. You'll see there's a line of trucks that extends 13 kilometers, which is about 8 miles in your terms, and 4 trucks deep. And it would take a driver on average 8 days to cross that border. So I think, just to get perspective on 8 days. 8 days. You think about standing in a line for McDonald's. If you had to wait 8 days, how unhappy you would be. And it was a nightmare for people. The humanitarian effect of it was insane. When you think about it, also, again, no toilet facilities. I mean, if people would buy food from vendors who would sell food up and down the queue, that's how they ate, but they'd have to go into the bush to go to the bathroom. And it was a nightmare, generally speaking. So we were the technology subcontractors to a large consortium that raised money to rebuild this border post. It was a $300 million investment to do this. And within 3 weeks of us having implemented the systems that we put down on the ground, and it wasn't just systems, I think that's the important thing to mention, it was all the change management that went around this. We've cut that 8-day waiting time down to 2 hours. So
from 8 days.
automatic.
I'm sorry. Wait.
Yeah.
Whoa. From 8 days down to 2 hours?
Yeah.
That's magic.
That is
Wait
magic.
a minute.
Yeah.
That's just
Yeah.
wow.
Yeah. And it's remained consistently like that. I mean, I remember being at the border, because I'm very hands-on with these projects, talking to these drivers, who'd been sitting in this line for 8 days. Many of them got robbed while they wait. One guy I spoke to had been stabbed in the arm. He had stitches from it. And yet, what the amazing thing for me is the guy still had a smile on his face. He'd been through this hell, and yet he was just happy that someone was prepared to listen to his story, because no one ever cared. No one cared about these people. And I said to him, I said, look, what we're doing here, and he could see that at that stage already much of the infrastructure was already rebuilt. From a border post that was really not a nice place to spend time. Now it's a decent place with clean toilets, green grass,
Right.
just a decent environment. We said to him, watch the space. It's going to be completely different. And of course, there was massive skepticism as to whether we could pull this off or not. We didn't think we would get it fixed so quickly, to be honest. I'd like to say we were that optimistic, but the process that we followed to achieve that result was, as I said earlier in this interview, was to understand all the stakeholders involved in a process to see where the bottlenecks are.
Right.
And what we realized is that there were actually simple things that needed to be done to solve the problem. Putting technology in automated many of the processes that were stalled by corrupt practices. So invariably, if you wanted to get through that border quicker, you had to, pay someone a few dollars, a few $100 generally, probably, to jump the line. And
Oh,
by putting in technology that stopped this, and then also understanding why there were the delays. So a big part of the problem is that paperwork was not complete. So people would arrive at the border without the correct documentation, and then they would be stuck. So if a truck is stuck in the border, and there are hundreds of them stuck for days, then no trucks can come across the bridge, because this is a narrow bridge that can only fit two-way traffic, and there was nowhere
yeah.
for these vehicles to go, and that would create the bottleneck. So what we did is we communicated through an extensive communication program with all the stakeholders, so clearing agents who are responsible for getting the documentation together, government officials. There are 14 government agencies at this border post, so ranging from customs and clearance to agricultural inspection to road agencies, so 14 of them. Coordinating all the activities, understanding what documentation needed to be in place, and then communicating it with all the relevant parties, educating them on what they needed to do. Get your paperwork in order, and there's a green lane, and you will get through that green lane quickly. And we digitized the payment processes so you can pay electronically. So removing a lot of cash from the border, because of course cash was an issue. The minute there's cash and it's an opportunity for theft, taking that away removed that
Yeah.
risk. And the net effect is that it now flows, and it's continued to flow. So it's been an amazing success. The sad thing is that when you talk about the press and the news, so in the few weeks leading up to the go live, one of the local news stations was at the border claiming that our consortium, I mean, we weren't mentioned specifically, was the cause of this problem, of this 8-day queue. I mean, we hadn't turned anything on yet, so how could we be the cause of it? And that we need to solve this humanitarian crisis. In the meantime, this is a problem that's existed for 30 years. You know, we couldn't be the cause of it, but of course it made good news, you know, to blame these new guys that have come in for this problem. And the sad part is, once the problem was solved, you think the news station was interested in interviewing us? They weren't, because it wasn't newsworthy anymore. A crisis is newsworthy. The absence of a crisis isn't interesting, so they wouldn't take our calls, sadly. So it takes people like yourself to sort of reveal the reality. You know, sometimes it's sad that good news doesn't sell, only bad news.
Well, if it didn't turn out to be good news, the bad news would be the only thing, and constant chaos. There wouldn't be any news, period, because constant chaos means the news reporters get taken away too and kidnapped. So it has to be at the end of the rainbow. Yeah, it has to be some sort of pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. It has to be. So
Sure.
I like to get to that part. Yeah, let me pot of gold.
Exactly.
Pot of gold. Oh my goodness.
Well, that's the idea.
Oh, Miss. Yeah, I would think, and I guess it's what you would call more profitable with the negativity, but it's more profitable, like what you just explained. That scenario that is more profitable in both aspects. Everyone's happy in that aspect. You went from 8 days down to 2 hours. Who's not happy? Then they're making money faster at that border. They're making money faster. They're getting the people through. So at the end of the day,
improving the image.
Chaotic. right, much cleaner
Mm.
image, correct. And then that will
Mm.
attract more people. Like, oh wow, this is cool. I know I
Exactly.
would be interested. I wouldn't want to sit anywhere for 8 days. No, no, thank you. 2 hours, cool. You can get some pictures in, like, oh, that's cool. All right, you see that? You know,
Yeah.
that's
Yeah, no,
just
it's
enough time. You know?
exactly. No, it's pretty rewarding to see,
Yeah.
because what was interesting is we monitored, as part of the marketing campaign, the social media feeds, and groups of truckers. And you could see, obviously, leading up to this go live, there was massive negativity, because unfortunately, the only way to pay for this border post upgrade is to collect a toll. And it's not a small toll. It's,
Mm-hmm.
depending on the size of the vehicle, it's between 150 and 300 US dollars. And of course, they were complaining, why should they pay this toll, if the service is still going to be poor? And it took so there was a lot of negativity about this on social media. But now when you go onto those same channels today, it's quiet. Everyone's happy. They're complaining about other border posts in other countries. Because if you think about it, if you've got a
Yeah.
big rig truck and that's sitting for 8 days, the cost of that in fuel, but also the cost of that asset not working for 8 days is in the thousands of dollars. So $200-300 fee to go from 8 days to 2 hours is actually for free. And that's why now there's no complaint about the fee, because they're getting value for that fee. But it's always difficult in the beginning to convince people that, you know what, you're going to get value for it. They want to see it first. But unfortunately,
Right.
if a project like this is being funded by commercial banks, which it is, they're not going to say, don't worry, you can try it out first, and then when you're happy, pay. It doesn't work like that. So you have to
Right.
accept sometimes there's negativity in the beginning, which you have to just deal with. But once you demonstrate success, that goes away. That's where it is today. So it's a 20-year project that we were involved in. So, the build phase of the project is 2 years. The first phase was the freight terminal, which is the major one. Then buses and commuter vehicle, that phase is going live in June this year. And then the final phase, which is for pedestrians, because there's actually a huge number of pedestrians that cross that border every day. It goes live in November, and then the build phase is complete, and then we're into maintenance for the next 18 years. So I'll be a bit older by the time that's done. Just a bit,
Well, hey,
probably a bit grayer.
more than likely, I'm sure with the stuff you have to go through just to even get things going in the good direction, the right direction.
Yeah.
Oof, my hat is off to you. My hat is off to you. Oh my
No, we do
goodness,
it because we enjoy
wow.
it,
But
and we're
you
passionate
do it
about it.
because you enjoy it.
Yeah,
That's
and we
right.
make a
That's
difference.
right. That's right.
It's really rewarding to see it. It's hard to explain that feeling when you see that success, when you see that sort of difference made to people, and the impact is on thousands of people. It really is rewarding. More rewarding than the financial rewards actually is to know that you've had a positive impact on the lives of people. I think that for me personally is a huge factor, and I know. I mean, many of my team members sit behind a computer and don't see physically the benefit of what they do, but we do try and expose as many of them as possible to the reality on the ground. Take them to the sites, So when they're sitting behind the keyboard, they connect what they do intellectually to the physical result, and that helps with the I guess the thought process of what they do.
Right.
The closer you are to the action, the better you're prepared, and the better context you have. I think that's probably the best way to put it.
Sounds great. Sounds great to me. So, would you like to announce any social medias, websites, or anything like that to our real ones?
Sure. So I think you can find most of our social media activities on LinkedIn. So you can follow me on LinkedIn and IceTech on LinkedIn. I post quite prolifically on both the company profile as well as my own. And our website is www.icetech.io. But the best place to find us is on LinkedIn. I always post on interesting topics, or interesting to me anyway. And you could follow us, it would be great. We really appreciate this opportunity to talk to your audience. Interesting to get their perspective on what we do. Certainly.
It's very educational. I tell you that, and it helps. It does help. Like we already stated here, that to get someone that's actually in that field, like yourself, and to give us those details like you have, we don't, on the outside, as like a general public, we don't get to see that. We don't know about it. Only thing we see is what's going on here, what's going on,
Sure.
but no one's actually able to explain it like you have. And I want to thank
Well,
you
I hope I have.
personally. Yeah. You did a great job. I feel as though you did. I hope my
Thank you.
questions help to fill some people void that would like to
Of course.
know. But hey, you have a website for that, and you on LinkedIn so that they can get themselves involved and say, hey, what can we do? Maybe a major
You're welcome back.
corporation to say, well, we got $700 million for IceTech to expand. You never know who will see the
Bring
video.
it.
They'll find out.
Sure.
You know?
Sure. Well, it's
If I had it,
amazing
I know I
that. Thank you. But it's amazing to have met, on a plane going to Nigeria, just by accident. And it was an interesting flight, if you recall. It was there was a brawl on it, which was not unusual in Africa. And but what was interesting about that trip, actually, and you will have experienced it in the airports, the reason we went was to meet with the Minister of Aviation to look at a project to digitize the airport experience and improve it, which, as I'm sure you can attest to, needs lots of improvement.
Yes. It does.
So we haven't got the project yet, but we certainly would welcome the opportunity to improve that experience, because I can tell you it was on the list of fun things not to do. It's right up there.
They were fighting up that thing. I was like, oh my God.
Yeah, if that happened on a plane in the US, it would have been grounded. It would have been, the flight would have been stopped, guaranteed.
Yeah, and that shopping, because the stewardess was the one that came in, and she was like,
Yeah.
hold it. I was like, you gotta move for somebody to hit you. Oh my
I
goodness.
was impressed with her because she was a small lady, and she got in the middle of these
Yes.
pretty big Nigerians who were angry and wanted to hit each other, and over
Mm-hmm.
luggage space. I mean, it was the most ridiculous reason to have a fight, but it was certainly entertaining. I'll put
Right.
it that much. So
Well, hello, David. How are you? Hello, Hester. Yes. Oh, guys, I'm just thanking you. And you guys, you missed whatever you missed. Of course, this will be on the channel as a permanent situation. So, and of course, you can replay it, play it again. If you missed something, press pause, play it again, and then all of the great stuff that goes along with that. But yes, Ice Tech CEO Greg Morris. I want to thank you on behalf of my real ones. You have been a real one throughout this entire interview. Thank you, thank you, thank you, and hats off to you again for being how you
pleasure.
are. And people like you are so needed in this world for
Thank you.
making a
And people
change.
like you are needed actually for giving us the opportunity to just show what we do. So I appreciate your time, and your audience's time, and I've had a lot of fun, and it was great. It's a first for me, so I enjoyed it.
This is your first time, like interviewing
Well, live.
like this.
So I did a pre-recorded podcast, a video cast, but it's the first time I've done a live. Actually, sorry, I lie. I did a very short segment on CNBC, probably about 5-6 years ago. It was a 6-minute segment on Bitcoin mining. And I just gave a talk on that, but it was 6 minutes, so I forgot about that. So if you look that up, you may find
Bitcoin mining.
CNBC. Yeah.
I'm gonna have to ask you some things about that Bitcoin mining because that is one thing I am nervous about.
Yeah. Well,
So many people running scams. I'm like, oh god.
Yeah. Look, it's an interesting domain, the cryptocurrency domain, and I think it's not unlike the early days of the internet. There will be winners and losers. My personal view is that most of the crypto coins that are out there are, I wouldn't use the term scams per se, but I think people are going to lose money, because ultimately it's a very simple thing. If you're going to offer a product, it needs to have utility. It needs to add value to somebody long term. And many of these things don't have any practical utility. So the value is based on hype. And, similar to the early days of the internet, no one knew which companies would succeed and actually offer a real service that people wanted. And those are the ones that survived. The rest fell by the wayside. And I think the same is going to happen in the cryptocurrency space. The moment the technology is simply not at a level where it offers a meaningfully better service than traditional banking channels. When that technology then catches up with it, then I think it'll become clear who the winners are. The original perspective or the original basis on which Bitcoin was launched was to become this currency that was not governed by any one organization or body. It stood on its own. And the reality is that that's created the opportunity for all these unregulated cryptos, that it's very difficult for the average man in the street to establish whether it's real or not, because there's no regulation. And it's relatively easy to manipulate these currencies. There have been many instances where it's been shown. So, for me personally, it's the kind of thing you can invest in if you've got spare cash that you don't mind losing. But I certainly wouldn't put my retirement savings into it. You'll get the naysayers will say, well, they've made 10 or 1,000 times their money. Well, they're lucky. I think they need to be cognizant of the fact that they're lucky and they can lose it just as easily as they made it, because there's no real substance behind these things at this stage. So I know off topic, but it's just a perspective I have on these things. So
that's great. See, and that's why when you and I had that conversation on the plane, that's when I realized. I said, no, I need you to explain some of the stuff, because I know a lot of people that's interested, but they don't know how it actually works. And just that perspective, what you just did, helped a lot. It just definitely cleared up what I was thinking about crypto.
Yeah.
So I thank you.
Yeah. Sure. Absolutely. Pleasure. No problem. Thank you. It's been awesome.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. So on that note, we are going to sign out, you guys. So don't forget, you can Google Real Dence Nay. That is basically how you find everything Real Dence Nay. And make sure you guys go and check out that Real Ones merchandise. Okay? Don't forget, check it out. The link is also in the description box. And the link to IceTech Greg Morris is also in the description box. So make sure you guys head down to that description box. Keep up what's going on. Stay informed. Stay informed, people. Don't get lost in the mix. Know the truth. Stay informed. So, and that's what we came here to do today. Thank you, Greg.
Great. Pleasure. Thank you. Thank you so much. Have an awesome day, everybody.
Definitely. Yes, everyone. I thank you again. And wow, the CEO. You can't get any better than that. That's the source itself. The CEO. Major baby. And right here on a Real Disney. So until next time, you guys. I love you, real ones.